Today we're making a sack hat, also called a cat ear beanie. It will be ribbed and have a brim that folds up. I'll be using 80 grams of Big Twist Renewal yarn in green, which is a number 3 or lightweight recycled acrylic yarn. I'll also use a 4mm hook, some scissors, and a yarn needle. To start, we'll make a slip knot. And to make a slip knot, place the yarn over the palm of your hand with the tail end at the bottom. Hold the yarn down with your thumb. Make sure that you have at least a few inches for your tail. Then wrap the top around 2 fingers to form an X. And then I like to hold this part with my pinky. Insert your hook under one side of the X, then over and grab the other side and pull it through. Then remove your fingers and tighten the knot. Now we'll chain. To chain, yarn over and pull through the loop on your hook. And here's our first chain, a little sideways V. Again, yarn over and pull through. And we're going to chain the vertical length of the beanie that we want. And this length will include the brim that you'll fold up. I wanted about 27 centimeters, so I did 60 chains. You might need more or less chains depending on the thickness of your yarn and how big you want it to be. Now we're going to chain one more as our turning chain for a total of 61 chains. Then we'll skip that first chain, and in the second we'll do a half double crochet. To do a half double crochet, yarn over, insert your hook into the second chain from the hook, so go into the V and under the top loop, then yarn over, pull through. Now you should have 3 loops on your hook, yarn over, pull through the 3 loops. Now we'll move on to the next chain and do another half double crochet. Again, yarn over, insert your hook into the V, yarn over, pull through, yarn over, and pull through all 3 loops on your hook. And we'll half double crochet all the way across. Once you do your last half double crochet into the last chain, we're going to start the next row. To start every new row, we're going to chain 1, then turn. And from now on, we're going to work in the back loops only. So if you look at it from the top, you can see the sideways V's for each stitch. So this first one is the chain we just made, then the next one is the first stitch. And we'll start our half double crochet by yarning over, then we'll insert our hook in through the top, through the V, and out the back, grabbing only the back loop. Then we'll finish our half double crochet. Then we'll move on to the next stitch. Again, yarn over, insert your hook from the top, through the V and out the back, and complete your half double crochet. And we'll do that all the way across. Once you get to the end, make sure that you don't miss the very last stitch or your sides won't stay straight. You should end up with the same number of stitches for every row. Now we'll start row 3. Again, we'll chain 1 and turn. And in the first stitch, we'll do a half double crochet into the back loops only. And we'll continue that all the way across. And we're going to repeat these rows until it can fully wrap around your head with a little stretching. And the number of rows you do has to be even. I did a total of 66 rows. Each of these ridges have 1 row to either side of it, so these are 2 rows, then these are the next 2 rows, and these are the next. My 66 rows measure about 40 centimeters, and for reference, my head is about 53 centimeters around, and it can easily stretch to fit it. Now we're going to attach these sides together. First we'll chain 1 and turn like we've been doing. Then we'll pull it up from the middle so the ends lay on top of each other. Now we'll slip stitch across. So in the first stitch, insert your hook from the front and out the top of the V, grabbing only the front loop. Then make sure you drop your yarn over to the right side, then over and insert your hook into the first chain on the other end. And you can turn it to see which chain you put your first half double crochet into. And insert your hook into the bottom of that chain. Then yarn over, pull through both ends, and pull through the loop on your hook. Then in the next stitch, insert your hook from the front and out the top of the V, then over and into the next chain on the other end, and you can see these little bumps at the bottom of each chain. Yarn over, pull through both ends, and pull through the loop on your hook, and we'll continue slip stitching all the way across. Once we reach the end, both ends should be fully connected and it should look like this. Now for closing up the top, you can slip stitch it closed, but I'll sew mine instead since there aren't defined stitches. So we'll chain one, cut our yarn long enough to sew the top, and I did about 3 times the length of the top. Then pull through with our hook and tighten the knot. Then we need to find the fold on the left side. Since I did 66 rows, there should be 33 rows on the top layer and 33 rows on the bottom layer. And I marked it with a stitch marker. And you can also add more stitch markers to make sure that these ridges line up on the front and back layer. So again, to count your rows, we have our seam here, and then to the left of it, row 1 and 2, then over the ridge, 3 and 4, over the ridge, 5 and 6. So I have my stitch marker between rows 33 and 34, and that's where the fold is going to be. And now we're going to whip stitch across. So we'll thread the yarn into our needle and go in from the back layer and out the front layer and pull it through. Then we'll move over slightly to the left and go in from the back and out the front. And I'm doing 1 stitch into the ridges and 2 stitches in between each ridge. And make sure that tail end doesn't get tangled up. You can pull it to the inside, which is what I should have done. And now we're going to match the ridges on the top and bottom layer. And we'll continue stitching all the way across. Once we reach the end, we're going to tie a knot so it doesn't come loose. So we'll go under a loop, pull the yarn part way through, then go into the loop and tighten the knot. And we'll go under that same loop and repeat to double knot it. And here's how the top looks. Now we're going to hide our 2 loose ends. First we'll pull them to the inside of the hat to hide them better, and I'll use my hook. Then we'll turn the hat inside out. Then we'll thread one of the loose ends into our needle. Then we'll go under a few loops to get to a row. And we'll go under a few stitches along the row. Then pull the yarn all the way through. Then we'll move to the next row over. And we'll go under the stitches in the opposite direction. Then I'll go back to the first row and go under those same stitches. And you can keep repeating that, or you can snip off the rest of the loose end. And here it is hidden, and we'll do that to the other loose end. Then we'll turn it back inside out and fold up the brim. And here is the finished hat. It's rectangular, but when you put it on, it will form these little ears at the top. You can flatten them or make them pointier. And that's all for this video. I hope you enjoyed this tutorial, and if you did, please leave a like, comment, and subscribe. And let me know if you have any questions. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you next time.